Luke's looking at getting a Subaru.
Maybe. I asked what you thought about it. I think they're good cars.
What do you think?
It'd go well with your purse and your little booties.
I'm past the point of caring. I'm past the point of trying to, show off for my buddies and stuff. And
that's what I told him. I was like, I appreciate, I admire the fact you have the moral courage to come out of the closet.
You guys ever even driven one?
Nope.
Why would I?
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever?
Buy you a
Why
truck,
are you
dude.
bagging on them?
Get you a truck.
I don't think I'm not getting a fucking truck. Well, I might get a Tundra.
Get a 4Runner.
I'm not getting I'm not getting a 4Runner.
I mean,
Not getting a
get a Subaru, dude. That's fine.
I might.
You do you.
I'm looking at Subarus, Hondas, Toyotas, and that's about it. Subarus, Hondas, Toyotas. Tundra would be nice, but you got to weigh that shit down in the back, man.
Just put a cap.
And you got to put a lot of
Put a cap. Throw some sandbags back there.
put a cab on it.
It depends.
And if you get enough snow, the snow's going to weigh the fucking thing down anyway. But I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, that's
so
what we used to have
can go ahead
to
and start
do.
this shit. I wish you would stop your Asian hate. Is what I wish you would stop.
Not gonna happen. I didn't even realize I was supposed to hate Asian people until was it last week?
Well, I didn't know that they were hating on us until I read that they're hating on us.
But the number
We need to put this in the actual podcast.
All right. Well,
because
go ahead and
this
start
is
it.
Good...
Kick it off. You're doing it. Episode 53.
Go ahead, Josh.
dude, I'm not starting it. Roger's starting it. Roger.
I
needs
started
to
it last
start
time.
Okay.
Oh Jesus! All right.
Okay, Josh will start.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Culper's Canteen Cup. Hey, thanks to Carlton Zeus out there for the music for the intro. I don't know what is happening right now on this podcast. I absolutely have zero clue what number we're on. I think we're at 56 or 57 now.
No.
I don't know. I've lost count.
No, this is 53.
53, whatever. So as you can see, we're already a little fired up. We're already a little feisty right now. We just got done chatting real quick about Luke's choice of automobiles, and for some reason, why everybody all of a sudden in America hates Roger. So we're gonna dig into Subaru Outbacks and Asian hate in this one. I don't know if those are or if there's a correlation with that, but we're gonna find out. Let's see. Anything else? I don't think there's anything else we need to cover. Carlton Zeus, yeah. Hey man, thanks for your music. We need to get him on the show.
Yeah, we should. We should invite him.
Yeah, we need to stop.
You know what? We can invite him on the show and actually have him do the intro live while recorded. But you know what I mean.
That would be awesome.
That would be badass, dude.
That would be
It'd be like WWE when they have like WrestleMania or whatever, and they actually had the band out there performing like the Superstars, entrance song, and we have fireworks and shit going off. And that'd be badass. Luke, make that happen.
Yeah. So, all right. So Roger, what is up, man? So like Luke said, I didn't know I was supposed to hate Asian people until like 2 weeks ago, and then everybody's like, why do all these white people hate Asian people? I don't know. I didn't know I was supposed to hate Asian people. So that's news to me. But like, what did the Asian community do to all of a sudden just draw this ire and angst?
Well, I would say this, that Luke was way ahead of the curve on this. He was way ahead of the trend because he's hated Asians for quite a while now. And he projects his hate towards me. And it's actually kind of funny because it's exactly what's been going on for the last several years. I didn't know there was Asian. I didn't know people hated. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. I know people hate me, but I didn't know they hated me because like they're hating on Asians until I read about it last week. I'm like, there's Asian hate going on. I'm like, okay, whatever. So then I started digging into it a little bit and I started reading about it. And of course, they're trying to blame it on the whole China virus, Wuhan virus, which of course now the former CDC directors come out and said, yeah, this thing looks like it might have been made in a lab in Wuhan. So, it is the China virus or the Wuhan virus or whatever. But I had to dig into a little bit because this is the statistic they throw out for the Asian hate. So, because of the whole Wuhan virus, China virus, whatever, people are hating on Asian folks. And the number initially sounds staggering. So, hate crimes from 2019 to 2020, Asian hate crimes or targeting Asians, up 149%, right? That sounds crazy. I mean, just looking at the percentage, you're like, wow, 149%. Okay, maybe there is actually a problem out there in some Asian hate other than just Luke's. I don't know if he's out there recruiting or what the deal is. So, you dig a little bit farther because, of course, the articles, and there's several articles on it. But, of course, the articles, as you start to read down, because all you see is the 149% about, 5 or 10 times. And then when you get to the actual number, 2019, there were 49 reported cases of Asian hate or hate crimes targeting Asians, and that increased to 122. That's their 149%. When you first hear this thing, I'm thinking like thousands, right? Like we're targeting 10,000 people, 15,000. There were literally more people shot in Chicago on a long weekend than target Asian Americans. Because of the Wuhan virus, the China virus, or whatever. So, it goes back to the media. It's everybody's like, hey, man, you got to be woke. You're just not woke enough. And, kind of, it's like what you said, hey, people hate me because I'm an asshole. Sometimes other people are just assholes and just hate people. Doesn't mean like there's an entire country targeting Asians. That's just the way it is. But I don't think that you can, and maybe I'm going to be wrong. I mean, who knows? I don't think 49 to 122 is anything that I would be like, oh, wow, we need to have this broad concerted effort to, hashtag protect me or whatever. But I don't know. That's at least from my viewpoint. What about you, Luke?
I mean, yeah, the Asian hate, I don't remember exact. It was like about a week ago, probably longer. But it seemed like there was a campaign saying that, yeah, Asia, anti-Asian sentiment is skyrocketing. And I sent an article to Josh early in the morning, Josh's time, long, like 6 hours before Roger gets up. And Josh was like, I'm on it. And I was like, what's he even talking about? I'm on it. And he went to the FBI database and looked up all the numbers. And maybe he can go into what those numbers showed in addition to what Roger just said. But this campaign seemed to be coordinated in the news to me, and I don't understand this. What's going on? And then the Atlanta shootings took place, and if I recall, it's a guy named Robert Aaron Long. He was in his 20s, went into 2 or 3 massage parlors in Atlanta and shot him up and killed a number of people. Not all Asians, by the way. But apparently this guy was grappling with sex addiction. And for those of you who don't know, massage parlors in the United States, especially in the seedier parts of town, are well known as places where you can solicit prostitutes. I'm trying to figure out a nice way to say it, but you get your little happy ending in those places, and
the rub and tug.
But the media jumped. Yeah, that's the right way to say it. But the media was trying to spin that into, well, this guy, they immediately want to jump on it like they do every single time with, well, this guy hated Asians and he went in there and he shot up the place, because he's targeting Asians. I think the narrative quickly fell apart on that one because the guy was just he was a mess, and who knows what the real story is on that, but he wasn't targeting specifically Asians. And, I am convinced, though, I'm becoming more and more convinced as I look at this stuff and I look at emerging narratives in the media, especially when it comes to social justice, like this group's being targeted, that group's being targeted. I am almost convinced that it's some sort of Chinese information operation where, if you look at where this anti-Asian hate, narrative that came up, it also came up just shortly before the U.S. and China met in Anchorage, Alaska, for a summit where the Chinese just went off on a State Department and made them look like fools. Went off on them for like 15 minutes. It wasn't good. So, yeah, I don't know where the anti-Asian thing comes from. Josh looks like he's really diligently busy writing some stuff down. I'm about to call him out. But Josh, do you remember those numbers you looked up, the FBI numbers? Because generally those are fairly accurate.
So I don't remember the specific numbers, but I do know that at the height, so it peaked the number of hate crimes against Asians, and 2014 is where I kind of started back from, because it's not, if you just look at the last year or two, that doesn't give you a good baseline. I don't know if they're rising or falling or anything. So I at least went back to 2014. In 2014, there was 201 hate crimes directed against Asians, right? So that's 2014. It dipped down, I think the low right around like 2017, 2018 was back down into the right around the 100 mark, maybe a little less. And then for 2019, it came back up to whatever the number for that Roger put out. 2020's numbers aren't out yet. They won't be, the FBI won't publish those numbers until November, which is when all their crime statistics for the previous year come out. So it's still incredibly low. Like, like Roger points out, they're like, oh, it's up, 100%. It's like 50 people. And Roger's absolutely right. 50 people. 50 people get murdered in Chicago on a 3-day weekend. At least 5 have been murdered since we started this podcast, 10 minutes ago. So the numbers are minuscule. And Luke, I don't, and I hadn't thought of that, that it's a Chinese disinformation campaign, but I would not put it past them, when you look at what the Chinese are doing.
Wouldn't that be convenient? Is there's this big time anti-Asian anti-Asian bias, Asian Lives Matter, ALM or something, and anytime you criticize anything coming out of China, you're labeled as a sinophobe. That's going to be the new thing, sinophobia, fear of everything Chinese. And wouldn't that be convenient for the Chinese? It's like, well, you can't say that this virus came out of a Wuhan lab. That's xenophobic. It just seems very convenient. I have no idea where it came from, and it's just it's a real mystery to me. And Roger, it was hilarious because I think Roger started posting #ProtectMe right. and everything in Facebook. That was hilarious.
It's, what though? It goes along with what they're doing. You look at what China has done in Hollywood, right? As far as, that if you want strategic messaging, that is strategic messaging. You buy Hollywood, and guess what? There's no more, and just when they did that super shitty Red Dawn remake, it was going to be against China, and China was like, oh no, absolutely not. But you look at some of the Disney movies that are starting to come out. You look at some of the other movies starting to come out. Now the hero or the heroine of the movie is Chinese. And again, man, you want to talk strategic messaging? Buy Hollywood and start putting that out there. TV shows, films, and everything, and that's what you're going to see. But I think that's a pretty good perspective on it, and I think that's something that I haven't thought about. But yeah.
What was really funny in New York, I saw some footage where they were holding a rally against anti-Asian bias or whatever, and there were a bunch of of course white people out there, and they confronted a crowd that was protesting the Chinese treatment of the Uyghurs in the Xinjiang province. And these two groups started going at it. The anti-Asian bias was like, you hate Chinese people. And they're like, we don't, and they just started going at it. And I'm like, the Uyghurs are Asians too, you freaking morons. And that was a question I typed in. The violence targeting Middle Easterners, Iranians, doesn't include Afghans, Pakistanis, Indians, Mongolians, or is that just, China, Japan, Korea, and then going down into Southeast Asia? I don't know.
Well, now you've screwed everybody up, because all the white liberals out there they don't understand that. They're going to go, well, Middle Easterners aren't Asians. even
Yeah,
though
they're Muslim.
right? Yeah, no, dude, that's gonna be it, man. Everybody's you have confused all of the leftists out there right now. They're just like, what? Huh? I don't understand. I don't understand continents. So,
And maybe it's a combination of the, maybe it's a combination of the whole Chinese information campaign, along with Trump's not in office and there's not a whole lot to report on because everybody wants to be hands off the Biden administration. On top of, and in your specific example, dude, that's just like lazy reporting. I mean, it's lazy reporting and it's lazy analysis. And I would tell you, it is a perfect example of the media today, because yeah, I got it. There are some Asians that died in this thing and it was bad and this and that. Can you say that he was targeting Asians? Actually, you can say that he wasn't targeting Asians because he came out and said that he wasn't targeting Asians. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna just take a shot here off the cuff and say that the majority of owners of massage parlors are probably Asians. So again, they didn't even bother to scratch the surface and say, okay, let's go down 2 or 3 layers here. So can we determine why he really did? And then they didn't even wait like the 4 hours when the guy's like, no, rub and tugs, it's sinful, and I didn't want that in me, and I hate that feeling, so that's why I went in and do it. He wasn't targeting Asians. He was just, like you said, he was off his rocker. He was nuts, right? Just like when you go with the Boulder thing. I mean, how quickly did they have to go? What was it? Mina Harris, you white extremists and this and that. And it's like, yeah, so maybe you should just wait a few minutes, right? Wait a few minutes for the story to kind of come out a little bit. And maybe you find out that the guy is not white. And it's the hypocrisy that kills you, is because that's like the definition of like racism. I mean, they exhibit it every day, and it's not just one individual. It's like an entire swath, and it goes back to that and the due diligence we talk about, saying, hey, why don't you let the stuff just shake out? Let it shake out a little bit. But journalists today, they're just lazy. It's the whole thing with the, and we'll get into this in a minute, with the whole Biden press conference. I mean, that is the state of journalism today. It was straight lazy. Straight lazy, nothing thought-provoking, no hard questions, all softballs. When you listen to the pundits on the left, they thought it was the greatest press conference in the history of our nation. No, I get it. They're pundits, so they can say what they want. They can have their opinions, what they want, whatever they want. But it's just straight laziness, and it kind of, it pisses me off. And then the fact that nobody, especially like when you look at the Boulder shooting and, Mina Harris, her tweet, and she wasn't the only one. There's several folks, right? Nobody holds them accountable for anything at all. Now, had you done something like that, had you printed something like that, because she literally came out and was like, well, the fact that he was taken alive just shows you that he was a white person and he wasn't black. Had that been reversed and one of the two of you said that, I mean, you'd be out of a job, right? You'd be out of a job and they'd be suing you for slander and everything else, and you'd be the biggest racist. It's just like they keep throwing out, the Jim Crow laws and this and that, because remember what's happening on the southern border, it's, or no, I'm sorry, not the southern border, but the filibuster, right? The filibuster, Jim Crow era, it's racism. It's like, you ever notice that they talk about the Jim Crow laws, but you never hear the term Southern Democrats with that. They've managed to just separate those two, right? They just kind of cut that, they just carved that piece right out there. But anyway, I know Luke had something to go on with the mass shootings. What's your thoughts?
Well, I just thought we might kick this one around real quick, because a lot of people do see a problem with mass shootings now in the United States. And time a mass shooting happens, we know what the immediate snapback is going to be. There's going to be, we got to get rid of assault rifles. We got to do this. We got to do that. And it's going to be a big starting point for another narrative. Now, I was really interested. Somebody came in and to the office and was saying something about, another mass shooting. The U.S. has so many, and we do. But if you look at per capita numbers of mass shootings, I don't even want to get into this stat because I don't have it right in front of me. But the U.S. is actually not the top. Now, we have more than anyone else, but that's because we're a bigger nation, right? And we actually keep track. Good luck keeping track of mass shootings in China. That's never going to happen. But and I doubt it happens anyway with such an authoritarian regime. But like Norway is way higher than we are. as far as frequency and amounts of deaths and things like that. But it all boils down to per capita. But anyway, that's not my point. I started looking into like the mass shootings in the United States historically, and the numbers I was looking at went back to 1949 was the first recorded mass shooting in the United States. Now I'm sure there were plenty before that, but I guess they started keeping track of them, I don't know, in 1949 and looking at the numbers. So 1949 through 2021, and I'm looking at these and I'm sorting them by how many deaths there were, how many injuries, and all that. Now the most deadly one was the Las Vegas one a few years ago. But I'm looking at these and I'm like, well, from 1949 to like 1985 encompassed 49 to 85 encompassed about, I don't know, maybe less than half of all of them. And the 80s were kind of calm, and then in the 90s it just skyrocketed. And from 90s until 2020, that's when the majority of the mass shootings had taken place. And I'm like, well, what's going on here? And so I start looking into my little pet theory on why these mass shootings are, happening more and more often. And sure enough, I mean, there's a correlation. Correlation does not mean causation, but there is a correlation in the rise of antidepressant prescriptions in the United States and mass shootings. There is absolutely a correlation there. And you look at the frequency is when these, I think they're called MRSA, whatever, it's antidepressants. When those started getting really popular and started being advertised and marketed to the U.S. public, man, the shootings really took off. And we're talking like 2000 till recently, till now, till the present day. I'm like, I can't. And I start digging a little deeper into that. It's like 16% of white people in the United States, 16% are on antidepressants. And you turn on the news, man, or not the news, you turn on any channel, you watch it during prime time, and there are going to be commercials about antidepressants. And if you take an antidepressant, if you are, I'm sure there's people in our audience who take them. And most times when you take antidepressants, you have to be prescribed an antipsychotic, which basically will keep you from killing yourself, because antidepressants are whatever. I do think that there's some correlation there. And if you look at all of these people, mainly men, who have perpetrated these mass shootings, almost all of them were on some sort of medication. Almost all of them. And I'm always looking at the toxicology reports and all that stuff, especially if they're dead. A lot of times they don't come out, or a lot of times they come out months after and it's buried, but invariably they're on some sort of prescription medication. Josh, do you have any theories on why this happens so often in the United States?
So I read up on it a little bit too, and one of the things that that kind of was across all of them was, just like you said, it's antidepressants. Because if you're on an antidepressant, you generally are prescribed an antipsychotic. I think the other part of it is we have, as a nation, we took the rope out of gym class. We created safe spaces. We put kids in bubbles. The anti-bullying, the zero tolerance bullying, the zero tolerance fighting, stuff like that. And so you have these kids who, it either happens when they're teenagers or it happens when they go into adulthood. I don't want to say they never got it, they didn't get it out of their system, but they had no outlet, right? There was no outlet for them to vent their frustration. There was no outlet for them, to do that. And so they go and they choose, a very destructive, outlet in shooting people. And so, one of the other things, and again, I'll go back and say, the correlation doesn't equal causation necessarily, but you look at a lot of these folks, they were generally socially awkward. They didn't have a lot of friends. They got stuffed into wall lockers in middle school. It was just, they got their ass beat all the time. They're generally not, they're not the physical, type individual. You look at a lot of them. You look at that, who was it? The guy in Colorado, not Boulder, but when he went into the shotgun and he dressed as the Joker. Years ago with Batman, when one of the Batmans came out, you look at him, you look at Adam Lanza was his name, and then you look at you look at that kid in South Carolina who went into the church, and shot people, and you look at him, it's like, dude, you look like David Hogg, man. Like your arms are literally like 5 inches in circumference, and so man, I think we have, removed all of the stress from these kids' lives. They get into, late teenagers, early adulthood, and now all these stressors that they have, they're all new. Because they've never had to have stress before. They've never had to experience it. They've always been coddled, and they get to that point, man, they get a lot of stress on them, and then they just snap. I think that's one, but who knows? When we talk about mass shootings, everybody talks, it's like mass shooting, mass shooting, mass shooting. We have so many mass shootings. In 2020, Illinois had 69 mass shootings. Out of those 69 mass shootings, 42 people were killed and 301 were injured. Every single one of those shootings was in Chicago. So, people are like, oh, there was a mass shooting. Okay, well, 2 people got shot because there's no finite definition of what a mass shooting is. It's simply, it's not widely agreed upon. It's just when more than one person is shot, it's a mass shooting. Well, there's mass shootings in Chicago every weekend, but you don't hear about that. And the reason you don't hear about that is because Al and Jesse aren't up there, drawing attention. Black Lives Matter is not up there saying, hey, we have to stop black on black violence. It's only when a white dude or people who think it's a white guy, like the guy out in Colorado who turned out to be Syrian, who was, where I read, the FBI was already looking at him. He was a person of interest by the FBI because he was in contact with somebody else who was a significant person of interest by the FBI, and he had already been convicted of assault in high school for beating somebody's ass. And so you got a guy who's already been convicted of assault. He's a person of interest to the FBI, and he passes the FBI back. He passes the NIC for to purchase a firearm. And it's like, okay, well, we don't need more laws. Maybe you fix the ones on the books that aren't working, go fix the NIC system. Because there was somebody else, I forget what shooting it was, that the guy was like, never should have been able to purchase that gun, but due to the NICs, he passed the NICs, and they're like, all right, here you go, man. Next thing you know, people are dead. So I don't know. I'd have to really, really dig into it, but I think the fact that we have coddled kids, from day one now, and the fact that we have more people on antidepressants than probably I would say we ever have, is absolutely, absolutely 2 solid reasons on why we're seeing what we're seeing.
So going back to Luke's statement, I found a couple of these now. It's a little dated because it only covers through 2015, and we obviously had some uptick in mass shootings. Norway, so we're talking about death rate per million people from mass public shootings, 2009 to 2015. So Norway leads it 1.88, followed by Serbia, France, Macedonia, Albania, Slovakia, Switzerland, Finland, Belgium, Czech Republic, and then the U.S. is number 11. And when you look at the overall numbers of public mass shootings outside of what they're doing in Chicago, going back to the early 2000s, I mean, 2020 you had 2, 2019 you had an uptick, 10, 2018 you had 12, 2017 you had 11, but then 2016 you had 6, 7, 4, 5, 7, 3, 1, 4. And the numbers kind of stay in that range. So it's, and we're, by no means, we're not trying to downplay any of this, because obviously 1 is too many, but it's like Josh just said, he hit it on the head. You already have laws in place. I mean, what happened in Colorado is a failure. Okay, that is a failure on the system. The guy should have never been able to purchase a handgun. From what I've been reading, and I haven't gone to fact check a lot of this stuff, but they say that Boulder, that area, has some of the strictest gun. They basically have every gun law that the left wants in place. And it still didn't work out. You've got a guy who is a person of interest. I mean, it's like, hey man, the dude kind of hit like every single indicator that you could possibly hit, and nobody, still nobody caught it. So the reality is, at the end of the day, it's always something's always going to happen. I don't care what you do, right? There are going to be people that die from gunshots. There are going to be people that die from COVID. People are going to die from knives. I mean, it just happens. I don't care. You're not going to have this perfect society where nobody dies. Which, by the way, when you look up violence across the world, like killings, not even typing gun in there, it's the only thing that comes up. Because you look at, I forget the stat offhand, but look at the amount of people that are killed knives versus guns. I think it's pretty staggering. I mean, I think it's actually overwhelmingly like in favor of knives, right? The majority of it. I think Luke might be Googling it right now, but when you try to pull up those stats across the world, the only thing that ever comes up is the guns, right? It's all about the guns. And they continue, and this is what scares me the most, is they continue to, especially the left, they continue to overlook why the Second Amendment exists. And so they say, you know what? You don't need it for hunting, and that's not why the Second Amendment exists. And I think I saw in Georgia or Florida, they want to make it mandatory that I think it's male 18 and over. And this is actually pretty interesting. This is a pretty interesting loophole. They want to make it mandatory that every male 18 and over joins the state militia. Because they join the state militia, then they can kind of circumvent some of those, laws that they see coming out, right? And you know what? I mean, here's the thing. Let's say you take a state like Georgia or Arizona, where they say, okay, we are officially standing up the Arizona militia, right? And we're going to make every 18, just like the Selective Service, every 18-year-old male, you have to sign up for it if you live in the state. That's how you get your driver's license and keep it at 18 or whatever. At that point, I think you circumvent a lot of those restrictions, a lot of those gun restrictions, because you're legally, by the state's definition, a part of that militia. So pretty interesting take on it, and I'm surprised I actually hadn't heard about it earlier. And I'm surprised it hasn't been used earlier. And I don't know if it's like a nuclear option or whatever, but maybe it's just one of those kind of things that they're keeping in their back pocket until the left finally goes crazy enough. Because like in California, you can't even buy ammo in California right now. Like if you're not a resident of the state of California, you can't buy ammo there. I mean, it's just dumb. It's just dumb. So anyway, moving on from that, let's get to the big story, Joe Biden. So what's your take, Luke? What's your take on the Joe Biden press conference? It was, I think it was in total like 1 hour and 2 minutes, because that's all his handlers gave him. He fielded questions from 10 reporters, I believe, and none of them from Fox News. And the reporters that he called on, one, he had a list. So I think it's pretty clear, because Psaki's already been accused of this before anyway. So I think, in my opinion, it was pretty clear that the reporters were already canvassed, right? They had already gone through. They already knew who they were going to call on. They already knew what questions were going to come up. And then now all of a sudden you're seeing all these cheat sheets and this and that that Biden had to carry with him. And two things that came up. One is specifically like with the North Korea foreign policy. That's Joe Biden's foreign policy. Why are you having to read, something from whoever wrote it? Why are you having to read that off a script? That's your foreign policy. But then I want to get your overall take. And then the other question, Luke, is what do you think other world leaders, what do you think their take was watching that and watching Joe Biden up there?
Okay, my overall take is going to be pretty much what the foreign leaders' overall take is, which he came, and I read a lot of articles, a lot of op-eds, and they're all over the place. The op-eds are all over the place. You can hear my dogs bark in the background, maybe, because they're worked up about it too. They were all over the place, but how anyone could watch that and not see Biden come across as simply an old, weak man is beyond me. I don't understand how somebody could watch that. I mean, of course, our audience knows we don't like Biden. That's no secret. But I was like, well, let's see what he has to say. Let's see how many drugs they pumped him full of this time. Let's see if he can get through this. And that guy is on the way down. He's not doing well. There are so many things in that press conference that, I mean, Roger and I were texting back and forth. Josh was ignoring us, but Roger and I were texting back and forth during the debate. And we're like, did he just say that? He did not just say that. I mean, he was so off. The Biden of 20 years ago was not the Biden on stage or at the dais the other day. He's just off, man. He said at one point, he said a lot of stuff, and we're going to cover it. But at one point, he said, when I came into the Senate 120 years ago, and he just kept talking, and I froze, and I was like, surely he was joking. But when you frame something as a joke like that, you kind of look up at the audience, you kind of, haha, yeah, maybe you point at one of the reporters. He didn't do that. He just kept talking. So that was a slip of the tongue. That was not a joke. Anyone who says, oh, he was just joking, how long he was in the Senate, that was not a joke. That was a slip of the tongue. And there are foreign adversaries, and not even adversaries. There are foreign leaders who, foreign countries who have people sitting there taking notes during this press conference, not of the substance of what he says, but what he looks like. How does he come off? Does he look confused? Does he look weak? What does he not know what he's talking about on? And there was a lot of stuff, you mentioned the North Korea thing. I came away from that briefing and a couple other things that have happened over the past week or two. Statements from the White House that Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, is actually completely running foreign policy. So I'm starting to get my answers on who's actually running the show. Now, it's not odd for a Secretary of State to, have a big hand in foreign policy. But I think that Anthony Blinken has the reins on foreign policy, all sorts of foreign policy, even trickling over into the Department of Defense. That guy is running the show. Because on foreign policy issues and questions, Joe Biden, his answer basically almost every time was, we're going to consult with our allies. That's not an answer. That is not an answer. That's what some people like to hear. Oh, we're going to start consulting with our allies because Orange Man was bad when it came to that. So that's an improvement, right? It was just, one big time boner he had. And I don't know if anybody even caught this, but I caught it and I was like, I cannot believe he just said that. And I had it pulled up. I don't think I have it anymore. Yeah, he's talking about Afghanistan. And he said, and General Austin just met with Kayani, and this Afghanistan. He's talking about Afghanistan. And General Austin just met with Kayani, and I'm waiting for the briefing on that. He is the leader, quote, in Afghanistan and Kabul. Man, that's a really, really bad thing to say. You can't, he's the leader, I'm doing air quotes, quote, of Afghanistan. That was a major, major screw up. And if you think that wasn't front page headlines in Kabul for the 6% of the people who can read in Afghanistan, you got another thing coming, man. That was a huge, huge boner, and that's going to actually have repercussions within the Afghan political system and definitely the Pakistan political system. There are so many things to cover on this. I could keep talking, but Josh, did you get a chance to watch the whole thing or read a transcript or anything?
Yeah, I went back and watched it. You get around, I thought about just reading the transcript, but it was like that doesn't give you, everything that that you need out of it. It was a complete disaster. I'm telling you, we've said it before. It's Joe Biden is not mentally 100%. Like he is in mental decline. I'm sorry. There's just no way. I feel bad for him as a person, and I think his family is. I think they're absolutely terrible people for pushing him into running, and everything. That's neither here nor there now. But when he said that North Korea is his top foreign policy priority. Okay, so North Korea is your top foreign policy priority, not Iran, not a nuclear Iran, not China, who is expanding their Belt Road Initiative right now, who they're in over 70 countries, and they are signing SOFAs with countries right now by the bushel. I mean, they just signed a SOFA with Equatorial New Guinea. To put a port in, on the coast of West Africa. It's to say North Korea is our top policy, policy priority is absolutely 100% bananas in my book. I don't think North Korea should be our top policy priority. I think China should be our top policy priority, foreign policy priority. North Korea is North Korean. You can argue, I guess, whether North Korea is an existential threat to the United States. Do they have ballistic missiles that could reach the United States? Yes. Do we really think that North Korea is going to go that route? Do we think North Korea is dumb enough to push that button? I don't think they are. I you know I I look at North Korea a lot like Saddam. Uh, they're going to rattle their saber every 6 months or so. They're going to launch a missile into the Sea of Japan just to let everybody know, hey, we're still here. You need to give us some due. Don't disrespect us, because we have to save face and all that, which is, very, very important in the culture. But to say North Korea is our top foreign policy priority, that's ridiculous. That's 100% ridiculous. The rest of it, he had his little, he had his little Facebook, like I did when, you go to like Iraq, Afghanistan, you're showing your dude, like, hey man, who are all these people? Joe Biden's got all the reporters lined up on his little card, numbered, the order he's going to call them on, and everything. But yeah, to have your own policy, having to write that down so you can read it verbatim, no man, you should not have to do that because that's yours. Right? I don't have to. I don't. That's like going and giving a brief. I don't have to look at my slides to brief because I know it because they're mine. That's the guy's in cognitive decline and he's rapidly declining, and people are continuing to ignore it. There's a lot of folks that came out and they're like, "Oh, that was the best press briefing I've ever heard." I'm sure Chris Wallace was touching himself the entire time. It's just they are going to drag Joe Biden to the 24-month mark come hell or high water. They're going to weekends at Bernie's him as much as they can to that 24-month mark, and then they are going to leave his ass on the side of the road with the 25th Amendment, or they're going to make it. They're going to talk him into resigning. That's there's no way they can do this. It's a fucking disaster.
Maybe. I used to think that. We've all said it, like, hey, he's going to go to the 24-month mark, and then they're going to jettison his ass. But especially with what Luke was saying, and then watching that press conference, and you try not to read too much into it because it just was one press conference. But I did get the feeling that he is not running that administration, and that is the difference. Okay, because when you look at, and I don't care if it's Democrat, Republican, when Trump got there to speak. First of all, there was no sign of weakness. There was no way anybody else was going to look at President Trump out there and say, okay, this is a weak leader. And there was no doubt who was in charge. When Barry was up there speaking, okay, there was no doubt who was in charge, right? When Bill Clinton was speaking, when Bush was speaking, with all those, and weakness is not something that comes to mind, Republican or Democrat president, when they get, now I may not agree with their policies, they may be full of shit, whatever, but weakness never came to mind. And there was never any doubt in my mind, hey, who's running this show? With Biden, number one, I got weakness. And number two, he's not running that show. And what makes me change my mind a little bit is maybe they want him to, weekend at Bernie's it for 4 years. Because essentially every department is able to do whatever they want to do and just run their own shit. Because I completely agree with you that Blinken is running the show over there, that aspect of it, foreign policy. And again, like you said, starting to touch into the DOD, there's no doubt in my mind that's happening. And that's why he had to read it, because it wasn't Biden's policy. It was Blinken's policy. And so if each department head, if you're able to run the show the way you see fit, which is very dangerous, okay, and that kind of dovetails into what happened with the CDC, Fauci, and the coronavirus. The president is there as kind of like the fusion cell, right? So you've got all these cabinet members out there and this and that, and he's the one who takes in everything and makes the right decision. And when you have all these individual departments making all of these decisions, well, they don't necessarily have the perspective, insight, or maybe even the care of other organizations, other departments, and how it's going to impact the greater government, the country, what have you. Here's what's interesting with Blinken, and it's I would tell you this. I encourage the folks out there to go back and read the transcripts of the meeting that we had with China up in, I think it was up in Alaska, right? It was like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, or something like that. And I caught bits and pieces of it on the news, and then I went back to go actually read the transcripts because they didn't cover it all. And it was pretty interesting, and it goes back to what Josh was talking about with the Belt Road Initiative. So it starts off, and they do their introductions, yada, yada, yada. And then, of course, right up front, Blinken and the other guy he was with, they were sitting there and trying to be, all Billy badass and this and that, and try to throw out the whole cyber threats, and you guys are hacking, and we won't take any of this, and yada, yada, yada. So then, of course, China fires back, and they're basically like, hey, look, your whole spread of American democracy needs to stop. Oh, by the way, the cyber attacks, you guys do it just as much as we do. And they kind of went down their whole, list of how America's bad or whatever. But what was pretty interesting was after all that was said, so the U.S. basically said, hey, gave China the middle finger, and then China came back and, gave us the middle finger. Blinken makes this statement, and he says, I have to tell you, what I'm hearing is very different from what you described. I'm hearing deep satisfaction that the United States is back, that we're re-engaged with our allies and partners. I'm also hearing deep concern about some of the actions your government has taken, and we'll have an opportunity, da-da-da-da-da. Where is he hearing that from? First of all, I mean, it's like he just totally made stuff up. Like he's making it up. He's totally making this shit up. And then going back to two things I want to touch on real quick. Going back to the Belt Road Initiative, you're spot on, Josh, because when you go back and you read the transcripts, it is very clear China wants to have a war without having a war. Asymmetric warfare is what they want. And I'm not talking about asymmetric warfare back in the IED days. They want to have a war, right? They want to dominate the globe without troops. And how do they do that? You do it through infrastructure. You do it through technology, all your Huawei's and your companies and this, and you integrate your stuff throughout the world, and that's how you control and that's how you dominate it. And I tell you, it's very, very interesting when you go back and read the transcripts of that thing. It is very clear for the first 5 minutes, dude. They're laying it out. They are laying out their plan that, hey, we are gonna go fight this war, and we're gonna fight it without troops. And that's pretty dangerous because we're not seeing that foresight. The other thing with back to the Biden press conference, I mean, here's the other thing, man. He just lied. And this goes back to the reporters holding them accountable. He flat out lied. I mean, there were some things like when he was talking, we're sending back the majority of folks at the border. No, actually, you're only sending back 13%. That's how many are getting turned away to be sent back. So why wasn't one reporter like, hey, actually that's not correct. Statistically, that is not accurate. Nobody calls him out on anything. I mean, he gets up there and everything was just these broad swaths, nothing specific. And I think he had one reporter, that they tried to go down that road, and she is probably the best question asked is like, hey, you promised all this transparency. When can we, send the media down there? And well, you can send the media down once my plan's in place. Okay, so when is that? So once you think you fixed everything, that's when we can send the media down. And you could see her kind of trying to press the issue, and then it's like, but you got to be careful, right? Because if you press the issue and you try to hold them accountable, then they just Peter Ducey you and they just don't call on you. And Jen Psaki, I want to punch her in the face. I don't know if you guys saw the interaction she had with Peter Ducey when he asked her, hey, how come Fox is not on this list? That you gotta YouTube that thing, man. She fired back. Have I not talked to you before? Have I not? Are we not talking right now? Yes or no? I'm like, chick, I will choke the fucking shit out of you. I mean, good on him, man. He's got a lot more patience than I have. But at the end of the day, and I hate to say it because obviously he's the American president, but it was just very weak, and I think it was very clear to me that he's obviously not running the government. There are other folks running the government for him, and maybe they keep him in place for the next 4 years, Luke. I mean, what do you think? You think they just leave him in place and let the cabinets do what they want to do?
I think that's a good point, Roger. I really do. Titus, take a shot. I agreed with Roger. Yeah.
Okay.
And we forgot the thumbs up. So, yeah, that's a good point, man. Those folks, the great and all-powerful Oz, behind the curtains, why would they want to give that up? Why would they want somebody to come in with a little bit of chutzpah, who's actually being an executive and, having a unifying vision for the entire cabinet and domestic and foreign policy? Why would they want that if they already have free reign to do everything? But you're right. that is a very dangerous way to do things. It's doomed to failure. We've all heard about the five popes. You know, there's a reason there's five popes. There's a reason countries have five kings. You know, it doesn't work that way. There's one pope, there's one king, there's one president. That's the way it works. So, yeah, if you've got all these different, secretaries going in different directions, all that's going to cause is problems. So, but that's a good point, Roger. But at some point, now the majority of the Americans are peas. We've all agreed on that, right, Josh? But at some point, the American public's going to be like, wait a minute, I don't know. Talking about the press conference, though, the fourth estate, which is the media in Washington, that was a massive embarrassment. And how, I've heard from a lot of independent journalists, and I just blanked on one of their names, but like Glenn Greenwald, Tim Pool, and the other guy, Chang or something like that. I can't remember his name. They were extremely critical of the media asking questions and going along with the charade, because that absolutely was not journalism, what they were doing. There was one reporter who kind of asked a couple follow-ups and got a little chippy with him, but it wasn't anything like what we saw with Trump. Definitely not Bush. It's just like they were completely cowed. And it's like how a journalist could look at that, someone who calls themselves a professional journalist, look at that and think, yeah, that's okay, is beyond me. In particular, one thing that journalists, I can't believe they don't have, torches and pitchforks raiding the Capitol again, is when the one journalist said something like, hey, President Biden, when are you going to give us access to the facilities along the border? And Biden's like, well, you're not going to get access until my plan is in place, until we've executed our plan point by point. You're not, we'll let you have access then. And she comes back. She goes, when's that going to be? And he's like, I can't tell you. And it's like, what? If you're a journalist and the American people are like, what? You just said we can't have access until your plan is implemented, that you don't have a timeline for. So it's like, what's going on? This is the death of journalism. It's the death of journalism. His whole tirade, shifting gears a little bit, his whole tirade on Xi Jinping about how he's had more interaction with Xi Jinping than anybody, than any politician, than any U.S. leader. And he just kept going off. And I was like, Roger, are you listening? What is he talking about? It didn't make any sense. And he started saying, yeah, and she told me this and I told him that. And it's like patently obvious that all those things he was saying were lies. Because the things he was saying that they said to each other, that's not normal conversation, especially between two world leaders. It was a lie, and it was all just talking points and rhetoric. Roger must have said like 6 times in our conversation, which he was right. This is all just rhetoric. Now, yeah, another thumbs up. Good job, Roger. You're a smart guy. So another thing I really, this is when, I'm going to circle back on how when you have, Secretary Blinken running the entire foreign policy thing, then you have immigration, which kind of is a domestic and foreign policy issue. When Joe Biden they started saying, are they coming over because they think you're a nice guy? And then Joe Biden, it boiled down to this. He's like, well, yes, they are coming over because I'm a nice guy, but I'm not responsible for it. They're coming over because of earthquakes and hurricanes and crime and all this stuff. And what we have to do is we have to make life better for them down there so they don't have the need to come up. Now, I actually agree with this. I actually agree. It's like if you're going to try to stop the flow of immigration, you could build a wall, and that's great. Okay. But you got to look at the root cause of what's, the roots of what's causing the whole thing. And that's horrible situations, down in the South. So, yeah, if you want to, use the State Department, USAID, and stuff like that to make the infrastructure down there better, go ahead and do that. The problem with that is that other countries in the world who have even shittier, situations start asking, well, wait, the U.S. only cares about Guatemala because of their immigration issue. Now, I don't have a problem with that, but your liberal or those on the left, it doesn't make sense. So the only reason we care about Guatemala is because we don't want their people coming to the U.S. You see what I'm saying? It's just there's a lot of incontinuity, discontinuity behind Biden's message and behind his policy, and it's just not good. Now, Josh, another rule we should have is every time I say or one of us says chomping at the bit, you have to take a shot. So we're going to get everyone drunk. And Josh is chomping at the bit. He said he had a few things to say. I think some stuff about China. And I'm telling you, we could probably go on for 2 hours about this press conference. I have way more to say. But Josh, what do you got to say?
So it's interesting, when Biden was like, it's like I've talked to, Xi Jinping more than any other president, any other politician. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, you and Hunter had a lot of meetings with him, for starters. So I'm sure
Big
you
guy.
have. Big guy. I'm sure you have, Joe. No. But what's interesting is like, so you've talked to okay, but let's take it at face value. Let's pretend he's correct. Okay, so you've talked to Xi Jinping more than any other politician. Is that why Xi Jinping sent his foreign minister to meet with Russian's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov last week, and your foreign minister and Russia's foreign minister came out and said, yeah, we're pretty much done with the United States. We're going to start working closer together. So we really don't give a shit about them. We don't care about your sanctions. We're going to work together so we don't have to deal with the United States, and we can continue on. China can continue on with their 50-year plan, which will be complete in 2040. And Roger, take a shot, Titus. Roger was correct. And China does not want China does not want to go to guns with us in a war. They don't. It's not. It's not good for them economically. It's not good for them militarily. But what they are doing, and the Belt Road Initiative is a small part of it, is they are destroying us in the gray zone in competition, right? So you have the continuum of conflict, and you have competition, conflict, and then on and on. And right now, people say, well, we're not at war with China. Well, yes and no. We're, technically we're in the competition continuum right now, along that conflict continuum. But China is destroying us. And what's going to happen with the BRI, what's going to happen with what they're doing in that gray zone is they're going to get it to a point to where we will be in a position to where they will dictate the terms of what we are going to do. They will dictate to the United States, no, you're not going to do that, or yes, you are. Yes, we'll allow you to do that, because they have us in such a poor economic situation that we're going to have to pick the less shitty of the options. Right? There's not going to be any good options for us. There's not going to be options for us militarily either. With China, because we're just going to look at it. It's not going to be advantageous to us, and that what they've done. When you go back and you look at it, it's like, wow, man, that's truly amazing. You look at how many allies that they brought on simply by buying them, right? They go, we talked about it, a couple of episodes ago. It's like, hey, I'm going to build a port in your country, and I'm going to, pour money in here, and this is what you're going to do for me. And that has continued, and we continue to admire the problem as a nation. We continue to, go, well, China, China's our ally, they're not our enemy, and it's just, it's absolutely, truly insane. But, Joe Biden can talk about Xi Jinping all he wants and about his, what he's going to do with China. But China and Russia last week had a summit and said, yeah, we're pretty much done with the United States. We don't have to worry about your sanctions anymore, because we're going to more closely cooperate. Now, Russia, that's advantageous to Russia, because Russia's economy is not that strong. Russia's economy cannot withstand a whole heck of a lot. So that's advantageous for them. It's just the whole China thing is going to know it's going nowhere good. People aren't paying attention, and but apparently North Korea is our number one foreign policy priority, which again, absolutely ridiculous. Just give that guy some attention every 180 days. It's like, oh, please don't shoot another missile. We're so scared. Like, just well, what do you need? All right, you need some more, you need another bag of rice, another bag of flour. All right, man, we'll give you another bag of rice and a bag of flour so your people don't have to eat the bark off the trees. No. But we're going to focus on that. We're going to focus on, extremism in the ranks, which doesn't exist. We're going to focus on everything but, the two countries we should be focused on, which is China and Russia. So.
And you're already seeing it, right? You're already seeing it in other countries' foreign policies. I mean, when you, like Germany, we pretty much have to beg them to come out and do anything because their relationship with China is getting extremely strong and extremely close. So we're having to beg them, Merkel, to come out and say anything that paints any type of negative light on China, and they're just not willing to do it, right? Because they're going to look at other countries, they're going to look at other providers of, money, their infrastructure, what have you. So it's, I think it's the long game they're just not looking at, and it's to sit there and, as Psaki would say, we can chew gum and walk at the same time. Yeah, well, you really haven't shown that you can. Because right now, going back to the media, right now the media is doing everything to make excuses for and cover up the failures of the Biden administration's first 70 some odd days. I mean, it's like, just look at the, look at the price of gas, right? And there's this thing that's going around social media. It's so crazy now because they're like, well, and I think even some reputable institutions have come out and said, well, the president has no impact on the price of gas. Okay, that's made its way around, and a lot of like famous economists, have come out and backed that theory. You're full of shit. Okay, the president absolutely has a lot to do with the price of gas. Okay, what Trump did with the Saudis absolutely affected the price of gas. Now, is it the only impact? No, there are a lot of other aspects that affect the price of gas. But just like when you look at the price of gas, they're still blaming on the fucking Texas winter. It's like, hey guys, gals. Gas was going up before then, before the winter even, ever started. So the media, it's like when you look at that, I heard Chris Wallace when they talked about it wasn't Chris Wallace, it was Juan Williams. So we've all seen the pictures of the border, right? I think I posted on my Facebook page, and they had all the kids down there in the little thermal blankets or whatever, and they were sitting there saying, hey, look, they were talking about kids in cages. Hey, look at this, there's kids in cages, and and Juan Williams actually had the nerve on television to get up there and say, well, I wouldn't say that's, I wouldn't call that like, what did he say? Inhumane. He goes, it just looks crowded. That's literally what the guy said. He's like, there's like 400 people, right? And remember, Jen Psaki said, oh yeah, they're not breaking COVID, protocols down there. Remember that 2 weeks ago? Are you suggesting that this administration is breaking COVID protocol? No, that's not happening. Dude, that's just out the window. I mean, there's just so much going on that these people, and I'm talking about the left and the media, that it's got to the point they just write out lie. It goes back to the whole turning people away at the border. Like, he literally got up there at a press conference and just flat out lied, and nobody called him out on it. That's just the way it is. And now the media, I say they begin to get involved. They've been involved. They've been involved since the entire election and during the Trump thing. They go along with it, man. There's a guy, yeah, we're not going to circle back on that one. Right, we're not going to go back and recover that. How about all those things that Psaki was supposed to circle back on? Why don't we re-ask those things? Hey, so this picture right here from Project Veritas shows like 400 kids in a cage. We don't have to call it a cage. You can call it what, I don't even know what another term you would call that, but fucking cage. But we'll use Juan Williams, term. I get it. It's crowded. Okay, it's crowded. So is that in conjunction with the federal government's COVID protocols? Oh, yeah, I don't think so. But nobody holds them accountable for it. And it's not just with that. It's with everything. Brings me to the next topic. Filibuster, right? So they pressed him on the filibuster. And my interpretation of that of his response on the filibuster is that he's ready to nuke it. And here's an interesting tidbit. And just for the record, I'm in favor of keeping the filibuster, but I do think it should go back to the old ways of how they did the filibuster. It should be painful to use. Okay. Nowadays, from the way I understand it, you can literally just say, I'm filibustering. And it's like, okay, you basically have to have, 60 votes or whatever to force cloture. Whereas back in the day, you actually had to get up there and remember, they'd get up there and talk about Domino's Pizza and Carol Burnett and, Vanna White and because you had to be on the floor. And the whole point of the filibuster, and I know there's probably some historians out there that know a lot more about it to me, but it goes back to the whole premise that the Senate is there for the spirit of debate, an unlimited debate. So the whole point with the filibuster is that, hey, either party, anybody in either party can continue to debate the issues until they're done, right? And then obviously you can't vote on anything until the debate's complete. So I do think it should go back to the old days of, hey, you actually have to be on the floor, like actively debating or, whatever the hell they were doing, as opposed to just raising your hand and filibustering. But here's the crazy thing, and it comes to point because out here, who I've said it a couple of times now, Kirsten Sinema, I mean, she's playing her cards more and more moderate, more than I would have ever thought that she was going to, and she's catching a lot of flack. And no matter what she posts out here on her social media page, regardless of what the topic is, you always hear, people bring up the filibuster. You need to end the filibuster. So I always come on and say, hey, when the GOP was in control, was everybody here against the filibuster? When at that time, and of course it's all crickets, right? But it goes back to a stat that last year, out of the 328 times the filibuster was used, 327 of them were by Democrats. So it's like, hey, are you? And I think when you look at, I guess the food challenge hasn't started yet, right? Or the weight loss challenge. But when you look at Manchin and Sinema, and especially Manchin, I think he really is looking at the long game. I think he really is like, hey, power kind of shifts every, 4 or 6 years, give or take. And he's like, do we want to be the minority without the filibuster? And I think you saw, when you look at Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid, remember when Harry Reid had the first nuclear option, right? And Mitch McConnell said it. Hey, man, you're going to pay for this. You may not pay for it tomorrow. You may not pay for it next year or the year after. But hey, 4, 5, 6 years when that cycle reverses, you will pay for it. And they did, and they've been paying for it, right? And that obviously continues to shift. So I don't know, Luke. What do you think about the filibuster? Do we keep it? Do we nuke it? Do you think the president nukes it? What happens with it?
I do not agree with Roger on this one. I think he's an idiot. He's all on his ass, 100%.
Hashtag protect me, Asian hate.
One thing he did say that made sense to me was that, yeah, I think it should go back to the old ways. I think Biden actually mentioned that in the press conference. It should go back to the Mr. Smith goes to Washington type, where you got to stand up there. Poor Mr. Smith is getting weak in the knees. He's been up for like 24 hours straight, reading the encyclopedia, whatever. I do think it needs to be painful, because it's a stopgap measure for, bad ideas when one party or the other has control. It does need to be a serious thing, and it does need to be covered while it's happening. So the American people are like, why is this happening? Maybe they'll do some research on exactly why. But I do believe also that, and I'm more and more convinced of this after I heard the Reverend Al Sharpton saying that it's Jim Crow. It's Jim Crow. It's racist. The filibuster is racist. That's when I knew, oh shit, they're serious about this. Let's start calling it racist so that we can defeat it and we can get everybody on board, because no one wants to be called a racist. So yeah, I think back to McConnell saying you're going to regret this sooner rather than later. But I think that what we're going to see if the filibuster does go away, and that's going to be a big fight. It's going to be interesting to watch. But if it does go away, God, Josh is stuffing his face. You guys need to watch the YouTube. The guy is shoveling food in his face. It's disgusting. He looks like Homer Simpson eating donuts, man, just over and over. It's great. Anyway, if the filibuster is defeated, you're going to see a lot of stuff rammed through real quick. And I think the stuff you're going to see rammed through is going to have to do with voting. And I think it's going to have a lot to do with mail-in voting, not absentee voting. It's going to be universal mail-in voting, because I think the Democrats saw how successful they were with that in this last election. And I think this is their, Thanos, Avengers Endgame type play. I think that some people, I think that Manchin, you're right, is looking at the long game. He's most likely a true believer, fairly moderate for a Democrat. He's like, we need to play this right. But I think that Schumer's, Pelosi's are thinking this is the end game. This is how we get control and keep control. Because if we can change, how elections are done in this country so that it looks a lot more like a COVID election every single time, we can win everything every time. And that's the end game. We've got it. They're done. So I do think that this is an important fight for the Democrats, because if they win, they're going to try to change the game with voting. It's an important game. If they lose, then they can't change those rules. But I think run around. It's not. And this could come back to bite us. They're thinking if we get our way, it will never come around to bite us. Now, if Josh has done stuff in his face, his gullet, we'll go to Josh and see if he agrees.
100% concur. I think it's to get the voting changes in there. And, once the filibuster goes, that's it. That truly is it. You don't have any more moderate Democrats in there outside of Joe Manchin, really. Well, maybe Mitt Romney. But you don't, and you see, you're seeing more and more far left Democrats running for office. You're seeing them get elected. You look at Warnock and what's his nuts in Georgia, right? And once the voting changes, once it's universal mail-in voting, that's a wrap, boys and girls. Until there's a significant emotional event in this country, that's a wrap. There will never be another moderate anybody, right? People are, and people on the far right, they suck as just as much as people on the far left, right? But there's not going to be a moderate anybody anymore once mail-in voting is universal. And that's just, it's going to be done. It's going to be over. And, but, you're talking about, Al saying how the filibuster is racist. And then I'll push it over to Roger. So what was it? It was 328 times it's been used, and 327 of those times were used by Democrats.
Yep.
All right. Well, the Vox.com, put out an article 2 days ago, talking about the racist history of the filibuster. So my question would be, if the Democrats have used it 327 times and it's racist, would that not make the Democrats racist? I'm just curious. I don't know. I don't know if correlation equals causation there. Yeah, hey man, if it's racist and you've used it 327 of the 328 times that it's been used, guess what? You're racist, but you're also a Democrat, so I repeat myself. But that's all I gotta say on the filibuster. Democrats hate America. That's just what it is. And not one have come on this show to prove us wrong. So, there you go.
Well, I'm actually pretty interested to see how the filibuster plays out, because if they get rid of the filibuster, watching Josh dump the whole bag of chips in his face. So we're going to get to it here in a minute, but I guess we're going through they are going through another weight loss challenge here. So Josh is trying to tip the scale again to where he puts on a large amount of weight. So that way, it's easier for him to drop it off later. But, when you go back to the filibuster, if they end up nuking it, in my opinion, you're going to cease to see the government operate anymore. It'll cease to work, because what's going to happen, and if you've heard what Mitch McConnell said and you read between the lines, so you have to have a quorum to vote on things, right? You have to have a majority present, whatever. And the way the rules are, and they've kind of been a little lenient on it. They just, you can say, you're here. Nobody has to really count. You just kind of, okay, you vote or whatever. But you're supposed to be physically present. And I think what you're going to start to, this could be some pretty good TV. We may have to send, I guess we'll have to send Josh out there with like his iPhone camera or whatever, because they're talking about actually just sitting out the vote, like to end the filibuster, to like just literally not show up to vote. So you would have 50 Republican senators not go to DC, and now they can force them to vote. They can actually, and this has happened once, they can actually arrest them and escort them to the floor and make them vote. But if you have 50 senators that don't come to D.C. and they're back in their home states, I don't know that ever gets passed. I don't think that ever happens. Now, let's say for the argument's sake, that they are able to do that, and then everybody stays in D.C. and they force folks to come there and they force the vote and they get rid of the filibuster. What ends up happening at that point is they will go through that on every single bill that goes through the Senate. They're just going to keep folks back in your home states. And it's like, okay, that's fine. You want to play that game? You're going to have to, every time a bill comes through the Senate, you're going to have to go out and send law enforcement, federal law enforcement, to arrest these folks and escort them back to D.C. and vote. I think it's actually happened once where, and it escapes me. I was reading about it the other day where, and this was years ago, where a senator was like, screw that, I'm staying in my office. So they literally had to send like the Capitol Police, like, hey, we're going to arrest you and we're going to, take you or detain you, I guess is the right term, and drag your ass to the floor to vote. And when he caught word they were coming to his office, he finally went to the floor and voted. But I think that's what happens with the filibuster, is if they try to nuke it, I don't think none of the GOP shows up. If they force them on the floor to meet the quorum requirements, it's just the government will cease to operate at that point, because you're just going to get this constant fight on every single thing that comes through the House. Back to the voting thing, what's very dangerous with the voting piece is they're trying to nationalize the voting process. Okay, and that's very dangerous, because that goes back to like what Josh is saying. At that point, and I don't care what party it is, I don't care if it's the Republicans or Democrats, when you nationalize that process, anytime that you have one political party in complete control of the government, right, all three branches, they can change those voting laws however they want to meet their needs. And that shouldn't happen either way, Republican or Democrat. You're already starting to see, and this is pretty interesting, because a lot of the voting stuff, because of the old voter fraud, I don't know what else you call it, but you're starting to see with the news now, they're calling it irregularities and this and that. But you're starting to see a lot more fallout from the elections, where now you've got local, states and cities. I think Georgia was a recent one where they're like, hey man, you're going to have to request mail-in balloting, period. They're shortening their early voting time period. They're trying to roll things back, and they're actually making it state law, which is why you're seeing this push at the national level to nationalize the voting. But you also had several courts come back and say, hey, the way you did your absentee balloting was against your state constitution, right? Which was the whole point, like up in Philadelphia. And you're not hearing anything about any of this stuff. And I don't know. I guess you can't say voter fraud, because if you do, you get banned on Facebook or YouTube or whatever else. But I don't know what else you call that. You're starting to see more and more of this go on. Even more importantly, and I'll throw this to our Section 230 guy here. So I don't know, our favorite, right? Jack Dorsey was on TV again. He was on the Hill again, right? Looking awfully damper up there, but with his scraggly, homeless fucking beard. But they asked him if it was a mistake. One, like Zuckerberg is actually a pretty smart dude. And it's the you kind of see Zuckerberg there, and Dorsey. Just I don't know anything about them personally, but it's like Dorsey just doesn't catch me as the smartest guy in the room. And I'm sure Josh will have a great analogy or comparison for this, but it's like Zuckerberg cringes anytime that Dorsey talks. It's like, dude, you just shut up. Just please just shut up. Stop talking, right? Because every time he gets up there, I mean, the guy just he can't see through the thought process of these senators and congresspersons that are asking these questions. He doesn't see the goal. But anyway, he's gone back and already said that, yeah, I think it was a bit of a mistake to block the Hunter stories. Right. He's like, Twitter shouldn't have blocked any of those stories. And now they're starting to beat him up on several of these things. Like, so, okay, so now you go down that path. So you do see that, you block these stories. You admit that you shouldn't have blocked those stories. Those stories would have voters. It would have impacted votes. It may have even swayed it in some states, depending on where you're at or some counties. So did Twitter interfere with the election process? Right. That's where that road goes. And Dorsey's just too dumb to see it. And you just see Zuckerberg's like, fuck, just shut up, dude. Just shut up. It's I almost feel like, Zuckerberg is like Biden's handlers. Every time he talks, you're just like, you cringe. You're like, just please don't say anything stupid. Don't say anything stupid. So I don't know, Luke, did you catch any of Dorsey's Senate hearing? And what do you think about the whole Twitter thing?
I did not catch that. I wish I would have. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that probably tomorrow. I wish I would have seen that. But yeah, that's funny. You use that that comparison because yeah, as creepy as Zuckerberg is, I mean, you got to give the devil his due. I mean, the guy has set up something pretty amazing, and it's way more amazing than Twitter. I can tell you that right now. I mean, Twitter is it also is an amazing platform. It really is, but obviously Dorsey hasn't figured out how to take it to the next level and is it like Zuckerberg did.
Mm-hmm.
And I've listened to a number of interviews Dorsey's done, particularly with Joe Rogan. I've listened to the one with Zuckerberg, not Zuckerberg. I'm sorry, with it was of course Joe Rogan, Tim Pool, his lead counsel, and him and Dorsey. And his lead counsel did the majority of the talking in that interview. And every time that Dorsey spoke, he's definitely a big picture kind of guy, but big picture as far as managing things on scale, managing Twitter at scale and censoring it at scale. That's what the whole conversation was about. And it was an interesting conversation. But yeah, I got the feeling, yeah, dude, you're a big ideas guy. You don't have the ability to get in the weeds like maybe Zuckerberg does. So I'm glad he's seeing that the decision to limit or censor the stories on Hunter Biden. I'm glad to see that he's seeing that's a mistake, because it absolutely was a mistake. It was a huge mistake. And I don't even want to get into Section 230. I think that everybody is just forgotten about that. I think that Facebook is going to slowly fade into irrelevance. The only thing I use it for now, honestly, is messaging my wife. That's it. And you guys, because Josh can't manage to just have one platform. So we have to have two. Otherwise, God. So, but yeah, Facebook is just, it's not what it was. I don't know. I really don't use it much. For a while there, I used it for news. It was actually, I had some good news articles in the feed. That doesn't happen anymore. I think it's going to fade into irrelevance. I think it'll take time, but something else will come around, which I'm anxious to see which social media platform that Trump is supposed to come out with. There was some news last week saying, he's gonna make his move on social media. That'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But what I think we're all missing out on. I think any self-respecting quote unquote journalist is really missing Trump right now. Even Biden said that. Biden said that in the press conference. I sure do miss my predecessor. And they're all missing him because, man, wouldn't it have been great to read like Trump's Twitter feed or Facebook or whatever during that press conference? Man, that would have been fodder for the Washington Post. Or wait, is the Washington Post. Yeah, it would have been fodder for the Washington Post for at least a week. Oh, look at Trump. He just can't shut up. Dude, it would have been great. And now I don't know if this is Trump's design or if they've actually put the muzzle on him, but there's nowhere you can really go to see what Trump's thinking right now, and a lot of people want to see that. So I think that Trump is handling this really well right now. Maybe he's just taking some time off. I know he's still active. I know that for a fact. I know he's still active. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of Trump, a little bit more, lot more. And the Trump quietness I think is going to go away within the next couple of months. I don't think I did a good job of really addressing what Roger said. His points sound a lot more salient than mine. But Josh he's done chewing, so let's go to Josh.
He's got some crumbs in his beard and all that shit. It's all good.
I have to get my comb and comb them out. I'm hungry, man. Come on, I haven't had dinner yet. I'm hungry. When it comes to here's the overall problem. One, we don't have journalists anymore. We have activists. They're not journalists, and we should stop calling them that here on the Cup. They're activists. That's what they are. They're activists.
Done. It's another rule.
Yeah, there you go.
Done. Activists.
But for the I don't know who that is off the top of my head. But when it comes to the Schumers and they're get rid of the filibuster and this, that, and the other. Once it happens, and it's going to be done. And people don't realize the precipice that the country's on right now. But American people, they just I don't want to make Titus take another shot. But nobody holds them accountable. It's like we said earlier. Nobody holds them accountable. They keep voting for these idiots. They keep voting for these same people, and then they complain about them for the next however many years until it's time to vote again, and then they vote them back in the office. Because that's the name they know. It's it's like the distinguished gentleman. Who we vote for? Jeff Johnson. That's who we voted for last. All right, let's just vote for Jeff Johnson. And that was his campaign. The name you know. And but they keep voting these idiots back into office. Stop voting these people into office, and this stuff, this garbage, will end. And I know we don't have enough time to get into term limits, but this is just another example of why term limits absolutely have to be a thing for Congress. For Congress. Yeah, and that's a great point. You go back and you look at the things that had influenced elections, right? So we had Georgia come out and say, yeah, that's not, Trump didn't say, go find me X number of votes. That's not what he said. Now we have, this piece that could have influenced, it absolutely could have influenced an election. And then you have the Secret Service stepping in when Hunter lied on his Form 41 or whatever it is, you fill out when you buy a gun. The Secret Service stepped in when Hunter bought that gun in, 2018? And and one of those questions on there is like, are you an addict? Are you freebasing coke off of Hunter's ass every other, Friday night? Like, Hunter's like, no, good. And you lied. He lied on a federal form. That's a felony. Any of the three of us, man, the ATF would be inside our house right now, locking it down, taking all our shit. Well, they wouldn't get mine because I lost mine in a tragic canoeing accident. But these are the things, hopefully, I'm not super hopeful, but, there's a sliver that eventually the American people are going to get pissed off about and they're going to get tired of, and then they're going to start holding people accountable. I don't think that's going to happen, but, maybe there's one, slimmer hope that it will. But it's absolutely insane. And everything surrounding Hunter, it's like he's going to get away with it. What's the deal with Hunter's laptop right now? Anybody know? No. Ain't nobody in the media is talking about Hunter's laptop and everything that was on it. Nobody. The Hunter gun story. Dude,
he threw the gun in a trash can.
Yeah.
And then
Another thing.
beyond that, when they go back, because the Secret Service went to the gun store that he bought it from, and they tried to pull all his paperwork, and they're like, "Oh, give that to me." And thank God, the gun store was like, "You can actually go fuck yourself. I'm mailing this stuff to the ATF." And so now they go back and look, through the records, because obviously, federal employees, you can find out where they were, what they did, this and that, their logs. Yeah, there's no log of that. So basically, what happened was, the big guy made a phone call to a buddy over at the Secret Service and said, "Hey, man, you need to go square this shit away." And his buddies went over there, on official duty, right? Unofficial duty, and went to the gun store owner and then went and retrieved the gun because his wife went out. Right? I don't know if they were married. The brother's wife after he was died, and then he started nailing her. However that works out, but
I didn't know
she went back out.
Okay.
Yeah, not the stripper, but the actual
his dead brother's wife.
Yeah, Bo's wife, whatever. So she goes back out to go get the gun. Well, the gun's gone, right? Because the Secret Service went there and they took the gun and they went to the gun. You can't even make this stuff up, man. And nobody, like, the media they don't cover it, and nobody holds any of them accountable.
Nope.
It's incredible.
Donald Trump Jr. is just like, God, it's just life is not fair. Life's not fair.
I mean, you look at like we talk about the Washington Post thing with the Georgia election thing, and that correction they had to make. It's like, where was the follow up on that? Because I would want to know. Okay, hey, look, I get it, anonymous sources, this and that. I'm like, dude, you reported a lie that was covered for weeks that could have led to legal action, right? Like prosecution.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. Nobody cares.
Nope.
Unbelievable.
Nobody.
But
Quick. Go ahead, Roger.
Go ahead. You're good.
Okay. So our loyal listener Titus, maybe you guys will get a kick out of this. I thought it was funny. I said I messaged him just now. I said, we mentioned your name maybe 4. Unbelievable. He messaged me back and he says, "Sweet Jesus, people all across the globe will be saying the Doc Holliday quote. Titus, I've heard that name before. Can't recall where, but it wasn't good."
He clearly doesn't know how many listeners that we have if he thinks that people are going to be saying that all over the globe.
We're worldwide, man. 8% in India, baby.
I'm about to say, they'll be saying it in India. Shout out to our Indian listeners.
Hey.
Hey.
So on to more important news. So Josh has got a trip coming up. He's going to, a Caribbean island out there. Both of you are starting to take up a little bit more of the screen here, as far as the camera goes. So they brought it upon themselves to enter into another weight loss challenge. So give us some of the details. I mean, when's this thing starting? Okay. How long is it going? What are we doing here?
I actually haven't weighed today, and I had that on the list. I was like, I need to weigh before we get. I doubt Josh has either. But it was funny. Last night I went to a gathering, a little event. Within COVID protocols, everything was good. It was in someone's house, and it was less than 10 people. It was all good. Right? Okay, that's on the record. But anyway, I hadn't seen some of these people since my trip back to the States, and one of the guys walks up to me and he goes, "Hey, man, looks like you put on a little weight." And I was like, the pants are fitting a little tighter. I wouldn't say I'm in as bad a shape as I was before we started our little challenge months and months ago. But I have started kind of working out. I haven't weighed myself yet, and I'm not stuffing my face. I've kind of gone back on the eating plan I was on when I lost the weight back then. I've started, so I haven't weighed myself yet. Maybe we can start like unofficially this week, Josh, if you can find a scale, and we can mark it and then cover it in the next episode, whatever you want to do. What do you think?
I could probably go find a gym with a scale or something in it. So I mean, I'm down here in Florida for the next 5 weeks, other than my spring break trip. So I don't have a scale in my hotel room.
Should you start it after your spring break trip?
That's what I was thinking.
I mean, is that fair?
I mean, we can start it after the spring break trip. We can start it this week.
Let's start it after then.
Okay. So we'll start it on the.
I mean, just judging by what I've watched you eat in this hour and a half recording here, you don't stand a chance, dude.
You're funny. Yeah, we'll start it on the 11th. How about that? 11 April, going hot.
11 April. So that's okay.
That's a Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna keep working out and stuff. I'm not gonna do like I did last time and eat like macaroni and cheese casseroles every night at 11
No.
o'clock at night, an hour before I go to bed. But it's a yeah, like we said earlier. And Josh was the same way. I think is that I dropped. I don't know. I can't remember. I think when all was said and done, even after the contest, I continued to drop weight, and I really felt better. And Roger's over there. He's 51 years old, and he's telling us, "Who's the best shape I've ever been in my life? I'm in really the best shape of my life." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a long way from that." So I try to get there.
Hey, real quick before Roger closes this out, did they get that damn ship unstuck in the Suez Canal, or is it still jammed in there?
It's still stuck. Yeah, have you
Amazon
seen
packages? I got a bunch of Amazon packages I'm tracking, and it's like it's stuck in the Suez Canal.
No, because I asked because I saw somebody in my Facebook feed posted that the gas prices were, because you said earlier, right? They're still blaming it on the Texas winter storm. Now people are like, well, the Suez Canal, thing is really what's driving the cost of gas up. And I was like, that thing's still stuck? Oh wow!
Have you seen the meme of that thing where they got because it's like a big freaking ship, right?
Yeah,
and it looks like
huge.
It looks like some kids out there with like a sand beach shovel, trying to dig this thing out. And it's like, dude, you're gonna be out here for a long fucking time.
Smallest backhoe in the world out there.
Yeah,
trying to dig that thing out. The Suez Canal is not that deep either. I mean, it's only like, dude, it's only like 35 feet deep, 35, 40 feet deep. It's not that deep.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, it's bananas when you think about it. But yeah, I didn't know if they had gotten that damn thing unstuck yet or not.
No, and just for the audience sake, there, I'm not 51, but I will tell you this. So I have my here in the next couple of weeks. I have my health and wellness appointment coming up, and it's the first one that I've had since I started eating right, over a year ago or whatever. Here's what I'm going to tell you. If my numbers aren't like significantly better than what they were ahead of time, like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, or whatever, dude, I'm going back to like bacon and pork and pizzas and fucking steaks every single day. Because at that point, there's no reason to do it, right? I mean, if I do it because I wanted to lower my blood pressure, my cholesterol, my blood pressure has come down quite a bit. But if like the rest of those numbers don't come down, and I'm talking about, more than 2 or 3 points, dude, it ain't worth it. It ain't freaking worth it. The weight gain challenge. So anyway, that's going to do it for another episode of Culper's Canteen Cup. Definitely want to thank all of our listeners out there. And again, a big shout out to Carlton Zeus. Check him out, www.carltonzeus.com, or check him out on Apple Music. And for our YouTube viewers out there, which hopefully everybody's seen this on YouTube, because you got to watch Josh stuff his face. Your freemium content starts now.
Dude.
Fucking haters.
Whatever.
Man, yeah. I think your numbers will be better. I think they'll be better.
They better, dude, because if they're not, I'm going to be like, look, so I'm going in, I'm about 8 pounds lighter than I was on my last one. Regularly working out now, which I wasn't before. I've actually had the longest stretch of working out than I have in like the last probably 10 years. But man, if those numbers aren't down by like 10, 12, 15 points, fuck that. I'm going back to eating bacon every day.
Yeah. So I actually saw some tofu in the commissary, and thought of you too. I didn't buy any. So I know where to cook it.
So yeah, the YouTube people are gonna be like, yeah, this is some shit content. But tofu. Oh, now we're gonna start talking about tofu. But tofu. So Michelle made some tofu for her sister and her husband the other night. They had this whole thing, and they were like, "Hey, see if you can make this." And she put it in the air fryer.
Yep.
And she said it came out really well. But what I was surprised at, because I've had that, I got that tofu the other day, and I was like, man, how long does this stuff stay good? It looks like cheese and whatever. And I look at it, it actually stays good longer than I thought.
Yep.
So that's a good thing. I just got to figure out how to eat it.
Well, I tell you, I've gone through like a bunch of, and it depends on how you do it, but like I press it to get all the water, because once you press it and you get all the water out of it, it'll take on the flavor of whatever you douse on it, right? And so press it, cut it up into cubes, put some cornstarch on it, then throw it in the air fryer. Dude, I mean, that thing comes out like pretty damn good.
What if you don't have an air fryer?
Or oven. Like I do an oven is what I do. I throw it in a cast iron skillet,
Well,
throw
he
it in the
took a
oven.
picture. He took a picture of the pressing the other day. Did you see it?
Yeah.
I missed that.
I'll send it to you. Not that you'll buy one or eat it or use it or whatever, but whatever.
So it's like,
So
I mean,
we
you didn't. All right. Yeah. Whatever.
We need to win. One of us. I tell you what. I Venmo'd my daughter some money so that she can buy some lottery tickets up in Washington, and I'm going to do the same for my dad. When we win the lottery, it's going to be great because we're going to finance this, and it's because this would have been so much. Not, I wouldn't say better, but things would have been so much fresher on my mind if we could have recorded like right after the press conference. Because as I'm reading through it, I'm like, geez, I forgot that. Because those emotions and everything are just still so raw. It's like, damn, man. So much to talk about.
So how much tofu can you get in that Subaru that you're going to buy?
You know, the Subaru's going to throw them off, though, man, because I'm going to be I'm not going to even say that. Never mind.
Which, by the way, so we, Governor Ducey, God bless him, man, came out the other day and he said local mask policies no longer are enforceable. So it's pretty great because I've gone into Total Wine, I've gone into Safeways, not wearing the mask. Everybody gives you the stink eye. But the funny thing is, like, people are losing their shit on Facebook, like the local town Facebook page, because you're going to kill everybody and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, look, I've already had the Rona, got the vaccine. I mean, it's like, what's the point? At that point, that's when you go back to normal, right? But here's the funny thing about it. These same people that are bitching that everybody should wear masks will be the first ones to go out without wearing masks. That's what's going to happen. You're going to wear them. I can't believe that, the mask mandate's been lifted and da-da-da-da-da. But then when they run out to Home Depot or whatever, they're not going to wear a mask. They're fucking hypocrites. And I don't care if they wear a mask or not. I mean, to me, it's like, and that's what I always, I post is, hey, guess what? You can still choose to stay home or you can still choose to wear a mask. I'm not going to laugh at anybody wearing a mask at the store. I mean, you do you, man. So you wear one if you want to wear one because, oh, by the way, the CDC, remember back in September, they changed their guidance and said, mask protects you, right? That's what they said. They said it, mask protects you. So if I'm vaccinated and I've already had the Rona and you're wearing a mask, you should be good to go. Because by the way, did you see?
I missed that.
What's that?
That the masks protect me.
Yep. September.
They said that.
Yep. September, October. Because that's how they were trying to encourage more folks to wear the mask. So, by the way, and I think, Josh, you said this a couple episodes ago. So now New York, I don't know if it was city or state, is starting the COVID passport. So on your phone, you're going to have a QR code, and it's going to have the fact that you've got a negative COVID test, the antigens, or the vaccination before you can get into any sporting events or anything like that.
2 years. What's crazy? Well, one of the things that's crazy with that, there's a lot of shit crazy with that, but it's like, okay, what if I don't have a phone? What if I don't have a smartphone? You gonna give me one?
Yeah.
Did you not get your Obama phone?
Maybe I have a Nokia. Maybe
you just get a Biden phone.
Might get a Biden phone. Maybe.
Ooh, I'm gonna get a Biden phone.
That right there. So
you know what's scary about this whole thing? We were talking about this in the office the other day. Is that Roger? You're the same way as I am. So don't try to say you're different, is that we're all sitting here begging for some kind of card that says that we're good to get on a plane.
Yeah.
We're begging for it. It's the only reason I got, and that's scary to me. It's like, shit, man, this has snowballed beyond my control.
Because what it's going to do is going to make life easier and less ass pain is what it is.
Right. So, hey, could I get the big Star of David to put on my lapel so I can? It's easier for me to get into the ghetto because every day I try to go in and out, and you're asking for this star. I need a big star so I can get in and out of the ghetto better. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Now you get the big star, and in the middle of it, it'll have the date of your vaccination. I think I just,
Unbelievable.
I think I just came up with our cover art for this episode.
But then unless they, are you? Never mind. I'll ask that later.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, dude.
So anyway,
Well, yeah.
hey, for our YouTube viewers out there, again, appreciate you watching us. Again, hit up Carlton Zeus, www.carltonzeus.com, and stay safe, stay vaccinated, stay Rona free, or if you've already had the Rona antigen full or whatever the hell they call it, and keep your canteen cups tightly secured.